Hi everyone, and welcome back to the second introductory video for the History of Christianity 1 course. In this section, we'll look at the course resources and the course activities. That is, what you can expect from this course, what is expected from you, the student, in order to successfully complete the course, and what tools and resources have been provided to help you do this. I want to remind you of the course syllabus as described in the course introduction video. It is posted on the course website and contains an overview of all the activities and resources that we'll look at in this section. And I'll remind you that the course introduction video also covered the objectives and expected outcomes of this course, which I won't repeat here. I first want to mention the materials that are needed for this course. Everything needed is provided or linked to on this website, with one exception, and that is the required course textbook. You'll need to obtain a copy of this book, and I've given you a link to one possible place to get it. It is The Story of Christianity, Volume 1, Revised and Updated by Justo Gonzalez. That's an excellent book, and it's well worth the purchase price. From now on, I'll typically refer to this as the Gonzalez textbook. There are earlier versions of that book still available, but I'm sorry to say that they're not acceptable for this course, just because the revised and updated version has new material which is assigned, which you won't find in the earlier versions. There are other required supplemental readings that I'll mention later, but they are all linked from the website. Now, for the rest of this section, we'll concentrate on the course resources and activities. There are basically three broad categories of activities that you'll experience in this course. You will intake course material, then interact with course material in order to learn it well, and that includes reviewing the material and evaluating how well you've learned it. And then you will also work to apply the course material in your life and ministry. Now, let me explain that in more detail. In the first category of activities, you will be exposed to the course material and intake this information, and the two primary sources for this are the course textbook and the online video lectures. You should actively read the text and engage with the lectures in order not just to get the information, but also to understand it and pick up on the godly attitudes and values that you can learn from this information. The second category of activities are for you to intentionally and deeply interact with the course material. Your aim should be to thoughtfully process until you understand and remember the information, and until you can grasp and value the insights and wisdom that you can gain from the church's history. And in the third category of activities, you can solidify your understanding of the course material by working through how it applies to your own life. You should seek the wisdom that will connect the insights from history into your everyday lifestyle and ministry. In other words, there are activities for you to experience the material, deeply learn the material, and apply the material, growing in knowledge, but also in character and wisdom. Now let's look at the specific learning activities designed into this course. The course is divided into 16 modules based on the large historical eras and topics, and I've provided a course schedule that lays out how this course is organized, including which readings are required for each module. And that can serve as an example to help you design your own schedule, to help keep yourself or your group accountable to complete these activities. Now, all the modules have a very similar format and activities, and after the first few, you'll easily fall into a groove of the activities, just covering new historical topics. Each module has the following types of activities and resources. Each module has a hypothetical introductory scenario, and this just invites the student to engage their imagination about a current situation in order to help them think about the kind of things that could be learned from history and how it will help in contemporary situations. And then each module clearly states the objectives and outcomes for that module and topic, so that the student has a clear understanding of what each module aims to accomplish. And then you'll find detailed instructions for all the activities in each module. There are two different instruction documents. One is instructions for individuals, and one is instructions for groups. Each module includes assigned reading from the Gonzalez textbook. You'll read the assigned portions of the course textbook for each section. Now see the course schedule for the readings assigned for that module. Now the readings are mostly in order, but there's one section where the reading is out of the textbook order. So pay attention to which chapters are assigned for each section. Now, this textbook may seem like a lot of material, and that's because there is a lot of material that is covered. But there are two things that I've provided to help you tackle all of this successfully. First, you'll find a textbook study guide. There's one document that covers the entire textbook, and that's on the course intro page. But in each module, you'll also find the same material broken down into a smaller document that covers only the material for that module. It's all the same material, so use whatever format works for you. Now, let's just take a look at a typical portion of this textbook study guide. It has the required pages for each module, and it's broken down by the chapters in Gonzales, and then even by the section headings which the textbook uses. Under each section, I've listed the important terms and concepts for that section. So I recommend that you look at that list before reading each section, and as you are reading, notice what it says, what it teaches about that particular term and concept. And then after reading each section, you can write down notes and review what you've learned about each of those concepts to help you understand and remember those things. And then second, you will find a textbook quiz to solidify your understanding of each module's reading. These quizzes will review and drill the material that you've read, and I believe they're a helpful tool to solidify your learning. Then for a couple of the modules, there's also a supplemental reading. It might be placed before the lecture or after the lecture, depending on the content of the reading and its connection to the module's topic. So just follow the order in the course instruction document and the order on the webpage. And if you come across a link to a supplemental reading, then read that material and apply it to what you are learning in the rest of the module. And then in each module, there are one or more video lectures. These cover fewer topics than the textbook, but cover them in more detail. And these are also intended to jumpstart your thinking about why each historical event matters and what we can learn from them to apply today. I encourage you to be active and thoughtful listeners as you work through each video. And for that reason, I've given you a study guide for each module's lecture video. I suggest you read them through before the lecture to get a sense of what you should be learning and even follow along making notes. And I've also included blank notes that are key to the content of each lecture. If that helps you to follow along and absorb the material better, great. If not, you don't need to use them. But those two resources, they're there for your benefit if you find them helpful. And then, of course, are the lecture videos themselves. And one thing I want to mention is that near the end of most of the videos, there is a breaking point where I recommend you pause for discussion. If you're working in a group, that's a great place to pause for discussion based on the discussion questions given in the video, as I'll point out in a minute. But even if you're going through the lecture by yourself, I recommend that you pause there to reflect on those questions and apply what you're learning. And the reason for this break is that right after the break, the lectures will continue to give what I call some guiding principles. Those are some practical lessons I suggest you learn from each module's material to apply to your own life. But I want to give you a chance to think through these things and apply on your own or in your discussion group so that you can discover and apply these things on your own, which makes them more vital for you personally. And then, when you're done with your discussion, the guiding principles will help you discover anything that you might have missed, and then you can go back to consider and discuss anything from those guiding principles that stood out. And then, after the video lectures, you'll find a slideshow review of some of the important concepts and ideas from the lecture that includes the summaries, application questions, and guiding principles for you to have easy access and review. And I've already mentioned the next activity, which is tied closely to what you should learn from the video lectures. Because it's important for you to process the significance and current application of principles that you're learning from historical study, you should intentionally process and interact with the course material, and hopefully with others in your group, working through the insights from each historical period. This reflection and/or discussion activity can be based on anything that stood out to you from the course textbook and video lectures. But I've given you some reflection and application questions with each module to jumpstart that process. Those are clearly found in each module, as well as a link to the instructions for this discussion and/or reflection activity, either as a personal reflection by an individual or as a discussion amongst a group. You don't have to answer those questions, but you can use them to get started in that process. And in general, you should work through 4 things. First, describe what you learned about the historical person, issue, or event. Second, what insights and lessons did you learn which are transferable to your own life and ministry? Third, tell what personal impact this has for you. Why do you think it's important, and how does it impact you personally? And fourth, how do you intend to apply these insights? Now, as I mentioned earlier, the ideal time to do this is during the break in the lectures, so that you can work through these things on your own or in group discussion, and then go through the guiding principles, and then possibly continue the discussion based on those guiding principles. Now, next are 3 things which I'm labeling optional activities. Now, in one sense, this is all optional. I'm not going to look over your shoulder and make you do anything. So what do I mean by calling these activities optional? Well, simply, I just recognize that everyone has different levels of time, interest, and energy that they can give to a course like this, so I've made it somewhat flexible. I think all the activities are good and beneficial. The more you put into it, the more you'll get out of this course. But if you need to cut something for time's sake, here is where you can cut. Or you could look at it from the other direction and think of these optional activities as bonus activities if you want to go further, and they're provided at no extra cost. The first is a timeline demonstrating how all the things that you're learning are related to each other in time. You'll add to the same timeline activity over the entire course, and detailed instructions are given in the timeline instruction document, as well as specific instructions for each module. Next is a principles chart, helping you to work through and produce a permanent reminder of the practical insights you're gaining from learning history. And there's detailed instruction document for this as well, and specific instructions during each module. And there's also the option of a term project. This is where you would choose one topic and research it in more detail throughout the course. And this also has a detailed instruction document and specific instructions throughout each module in the term. Now, all of these optional activities are kind of formalizing things that you should be doing, like thinking through the chronology of the history and the principles you're learning, and going deeper on topics that interest you. But these optional activities just give you direction on how to do this more intentionally and to produce a product that will serve as a reminder and resource for the long term. But then the next non-optional activity is reading of primary sources. Primary sources are those things written at the time of the history by those people who were involved. For instance, instead of just reading some modern textbook about Augustine, you can read some of Augustine's own writings to get his insights directly from the source. And I've provided detailed instructions for this activity, as well as a list of good primary sources for each module. Now, that list is not exhaustive, and you can choose other good resources, but that list is a good place to start, and it has links both to print and online primary sources that you can use. And then each module has a review quiz over all the material, but primarily from the video lectures. These enable you to check your understanding of the course material, as well as review what you're learning. Now, those quizzes, just like the textbook quizzes, are randomly generated and will be different each time. Therefore, they may profitably be taken more than once. And then finally, there is a midterm and a final exam. The midterm covers the material from modules 1 through 8, and the final covers the material from modules 9 through 16. There are study guides for these two exams, as well as answer sheets for each exam, and I recommend you look at those study guides before you get started and use them throughout the course to help you learn and review the material. All right, that's an overview of all the resources and activities of this course. All the modules follow a standard format, and you should get into the groove very quickly so that you can concentrate on the history and its application and not worry about the procedures of the course. And then in the same way, I hope that this site is easy to navigate. Everything should be fairly self-explanatory. Just note that there are different kinds of links that will reveal documents and more information and more activities so that you don't have to scroll past those things that you don't need at the time. The intro page of this site demonstrates these different kinds of links. And then the navigation bar at the top allows you to jump to each module directly. So, by way of review, there are 3 general activities in each module. You will intake course material, interact with the course material until it is understood and committed to memory, and you will apply the course material. And I pray that God will grant you great success in learning and applying the many great lessons that you can learn from what God has done in history through his people. And I encourage you to do what it takes, not just to learn the history, but also to learn from the history to become the kind of person who changes history for the better. Now, the link at the bottom of this page takes you to the first module, which starts with a series of introductory topics. And I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.